come on. Don't tell me you didn't think about doing the same thing. Hello and welcome back to Planet Sail and the second episode in our series On Course that takes a regular look at the sailing world. I do hope you've been keeping well in these strange times. Here in the UK, like many of you, we're still in lockdown, which means in the Sheahan household it's tinker time because the boat's at home. In the meantime, there still has been a lot going on around the world. In this show, we take a look at what the America's Cup defenders Emirates Team New Zealand have been up to. We look ahead and astern at the most famous around the world race.
3, 2, 1, fire! 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 Fire!
We see how not to do it, and how a small tweak might make a big difference. But first, what have the America's Cup defenders Emirates Team New Zealand been up to? Well, here's a series of short videos that give us an idea. The first one is about getting data off the boat.
The America's Cup is primarily a design race. Whilst we've got a really short time in which to make developments to the boat on the water, we need to make the most of that time that we can. What we've been doing in the previous campaign was capturing multiple videos and a huge number of data channels and logging that all to a hard disk directly on the yacht. Then at the end of the day, when the yacht was docked, we'd bring in that hard disk, get it up to the base. Now we've got 5G and we're actually streaming 5G direct from the yacht back to the base. It's made a massive difference to how we operate our day, because all those multiple streams of video and huge number of sensor channels that we're logging on the boat get streamed live back to the base. Well, what we're finding is that the guys who are not out on the water, so the bulk of our design team, they're watching a video and data live as we're sailing and actually discussing what's happening in the office and really thinking about what we're going to do the next day and the next week and looking at what changes we can make to the boat to make it more efficient. What 5G is doing for us is it's really enabling us to be dramatically more efficient and buying us basically one of the commodities that money can't pay for, which is time.
Hey look, I'm delighted to have 5G live on the water for Emirates Team New Zealand. It goes back to the promise we made over a year ago when we put the Spark Lab in. We talked about helping the boat go faster, and I think from my perspective 5G absolutely does that.
Shortly before the world went into lockdown, the Kiwis surprised quite a few people by launching a small test boat after they'd launched their first main boat. But it turned out to be a pretty smart decision, because whilst their big boat was being shipped to Sardinia and then back from Sardinia, which it never got to of course because that event was cancelled, the Kiwis were able to carry on training.
Really exciting today. It's the first day we get to go for a sail in our test boat, which is going to be a massive part of our campaign over the next little while. So it's got a lot of features on it that make it pretty exciting, and it'll be great for the skills to be able to sail it, but also great for the campaign to be able to keep developing systems and stuff on a smaller, cheaper scale.
Given the uncertainty that now surrounds the road to the America's Cup in Auckland next year, having a small boat to test on when they do get back on the water seems like quite a smart choice. Meanwhile, safety is something that's on all of the team's minds. These boats bite back pretty hard if you trip up. Knowing how to deal with an emergency is crucial.
We're certainly taking our safety seriously, but all the boys are getting in the pool to get a feel of what it's like with all the sailing kit on and see how the buoyancy feels. And we're just going over a few worst case scenarios, how to manage an unconscious sailor in the water. Steve Ferguson comes from a surf lifesaving background, so he's leading the way on some of the techniques involved. So we're going to practice getting someone onto a stretcher and simulate getting them onto the chase boat, which is just literally dragging them out of the pool. There's a few scenarios we haven't actually done before, so we're just trying to mix them up a bit, and we'll get into a bit of first aid later as well.
keen to get together and just put ourselves through a couple of scenarios, really that first response stuff, and if we do have a big wipeout on the boat, just what we can do to look after each other and get ourselves to the chase boat, and then ultimately to shore if we have a serious injury.
Just a few weeks ago, any event that started in 2021 seemed like a rather long way away. But now, with so many events having been postponed or cancelled, the 2021 season is starting to attract quite a lot of attention. And among the events is the Ocean Race, formerly known as the Volvo Ocean Race, which kicks off next year. One of the other reasons there's been a fair bit of attention just recently is that the organisers have just announced the route around the world. The race starts once again in Alicante, but this time the first stop is in Cape Verde. From there, it's south to the South African stopover, Cape Town. Then it's into the Southern Ocean for a long leg to Shenzhen in China. Before then heading to the classic New Zealand stopover in Auckland. Next, it's back into the Southern Ocean and around the legendary Cape Horn for the leg finish in Itajai, Brazil. Before then, heading up to Newport in the States. A transatlantic crossing takes the fleet to Aarhus in Denmark. Then a sprint to The Hague, followed by the final leg into the Mediterranean to the finish in Genoa, Italy. In the meantime, as the clock counts down towards the start of the race, the organisers have released two films of the original races dating back to 1973. Here are the trailers for those, and there are links through to the main films.
At sea, time takes on a different dimension. It's surprising how soon you lose count of the days themselves, though navigation demands accuracy to the very second. All the yachts are required to report their positions by radio each week. In the tiny world of the boat, one has to learn to tolerate one's shipmates, confined in such cramped quarters for long periods. Sleep is not the only means of relaxation, and the bridge school has been known to start at 8 in the morning. The bathtubs slide easily on the slippery wet teak as the boys discover an exciting new game, dodgems on the afterdeck.
Que l'on plante dedans, les poils de mes couilles seront les haubans. Oh, 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 oh. Allons à Messine, pêcher la sardine. Allons à l'Orient, pêcher le hareng. Les poils de... Stand by for guns. 3, 2, 1, fire! 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 Fire!
Cornelis van Rietschoten, winner of the Whitbread Round the World race, is welcomed by the organisers, the Royal Naval Sailing Association. He has built and sailed his own yacht to victory in the world's toughest ocean race. An unforgettable experience, bringing him adventure, comradeship, and the Whitbread Trophy.
Now, when it comes to tripping up, we've all been there. But if you sail at Lewes Sailing Club down in Cornwall, the chances are that your mishap may well have been caught on camera. Well, if you did, Here's a few of their favourites.
Come on, move along. I said, baby, I know you're on a roll. Sweet honey, let's take it real slow. You know we got what you need, baby, so take it, move along. I said we got what you need, honey, come and groove along. Come on. Rolling on that highway, ease up. Wow. Come on, and move along. Come on. I said, babe. I said, babe. Oh, honey, come and groove along. You gotta feel it, yeah. You gotta move along. You gotta feel it, feel it. Do you gotta feel it, feel it, feel it? Do you gotta feel it? On the roadway, you gotta move along.
For the first time in peacetime, the biggest show on earth, the Olympics, has been postponed. Tokyo 2020 has now been pushed back a year to 2021. Now, while the dates are the same, I wondered what this meant for the sailors. So, Ian Walker, you've been to many games before. I mean, I guess the first question is, were you surprised at the decision to postpone the games?
I think nobody was surprised. Japan seemed to be slightly sort of behind in terms of the onset of COVID-19, and especially with Tokyo being such a populous place, I don't think anybody was that surprised when it was postponed. I guess the big question on everybody's minds was when it would be postponed till. Would they try and go later in the year? Would they try and go in the spring, or would they go a full 12 months?
Given that they've gone for the same dates, but in a year's time, presumably that makes life a bit easier for you from a point of view of the conditions and that kind of intelligence that you've spent a lot of time getting, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think had they come up with a different time of year, like April, say, or May, it would have been potentially very different on the water. And we have put a lot of time and effort into understanding the conditions in that July-August period. And if you've not been to Japan before, what you might not appreciate is just how quickly the seasons change at that time of year. And we've seen a big difference, say, between mid-September and mid-August, and likewise sort of June appears to be the real sort of rainy season. So, there's a real marked change as you go through very short time frames. So in some ways, it's a bit of a relief. I think because of the sporting calendar, it was probably inevitable, and also the need for all the hotel rooms and the fact the major tourist season is slightly early in the year. They wouldn't have wanted to clash with that. But it was certainly going through my mind as to how we might respond if, say, they'd come up with May, and we'd already started looking back over all our historical weather data to see what impact that might have on, for instance, Olympic selections.
So what does it mean for the British team now? What do they do now between now and, because I mean, it's not just the Olympics that's been shifted forward. Lots and lots of events that they would normally have been to have been cancelled.
Nobody knows. This is rapidly evolving. It seems to be impacting pretty much the entire world, but different countries have got different approaches. We know that some countries are still sailing and still training. Some countries, like ourselves and Spain and France, are on are on full lockdown. So I think it's going to take time to wash through. It presents huge challenge for world sailing because the calendar is in disarray, and with all these postponed events, it makes you wonder when they're going to be rescheduled. And one could imagine if the diary is sort of opened up sort of towards the end of August, September, it's going to get very, very congested in that autumn period before we get into the Northern Hemisphere winter. Of course, the whole 4-year calendar is structured by World Sailing to focus on the Olympic Games, which is why we had all the World Championships in the Southern Hemisphere, or most of the World Championships over the last 6 months. And of course, that's not scheduled to happen next winter. So will we get any sailing in this summer? Potentially home, national based, one would imagine. Will we get any international regattas at the end of the year? Probably, but we can't be sure when we'll be allowed to travel internationally. Plus, of course, these events take a lot of organising and a lot of money to host. And will the clubs and the class associations be able to afford to run those events and to action them at such short notice? So lots and lots of question marks before the end of the year. And then, of course, now you've got to, what we would normally do is we'd work back from the Olympics. So working back from July next year, what's that going to look like? I guess ideally you'd do a bunch of training in Japan in sort of May, June, July, if you can afford to do that. One would imagine there'll be an early spring season, the sort of Princess Sophia's weeks, regattas like that sort of kick off in March, April, May. But really a lot of question marks between now and March. Plus, of course, the question of how we finance this.
And what do the crews do now? What do the teams do? I mean, they can go out for one bit of exercise a day. I mean, they're used to a bit more than that. Yeah, so when we sort of sensed things were moving in this direction, we managed to exit the whole team and all our equipment out of Palma. We pretty much got the last ferries out of Palma. Everybody was down in Palma for the 470 Worlds, if you remember, and Princess Sophia. I was actually away on leave, but the team made a great call, got everybody back. And then we set up a quarantine training base in Weymouth, thinking that we'd be able to self-isolate as a group and train from Weymouth. But very quickly, it became clear that the government didn't want people out on the water like in any other walk of life. They wanted only essential activities. So again, we had to change our plans. And the last thing we did, in fact, was to make sure that all of our selected Olympic team sailors all had the necessary fitness equipment. We effectively emptied our gym into all of their living rooms to make sure that they've all got good equipment, just in case we're in for a long period of lockdown. So yeah, we had to respond, very, very quickly to that. Mark Robinson, like many other people, always says that that's our Olympic manager, that you can't buy time. And of course, that's something we always said in the America's Cup is, you can't buy time, you can't buy time. Well, bizarrely, probably for the first time ever, somebody's just bought time. Somebody's just given everybody another 12 months. And that's an interesting dilemma. What is it that you would have done had you had more time? How's it going to impact the sailors mentally, physically over that period of time? And obviously these guys are used to being on the water. They're used to competing. And in the short term, we're trying to look after not just their physical, but their mental needs and make sure that they're still motivated and dealing with the isolation in a positive way, and also seeing in what way we can impact on the wider public and support all the government plans, encourage people to stay home, encourage people to stay active, and encourage people to get fit. Well, lots of questions, as you say, Ian. Thanks very much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be speaking soon. Thanks, Matt, and good luck with Planet Sail. Love the first show, so keep it up. But it's not all doom and gloom. Some events are still planning to go ahead. Among them, one of the world's biggest, Cows Week. And I spoke to Regatta Director Lawrence Mead. First of all, let's start off with, you've just recently made an announcement about what your plans are for this year.
Yes, we have. We wanted to get a message out because we normally issue the notice of regatta in early April. The early April date came and we thought, we're still planning to run the regatta. Let's get the notice of regatta out. So we've done that and made that announcement, yeah. Now, I mean, I'm sure, like everybody else, you've been watching what's going on in the world, and we've never seen the sailing calendar or any kind of events calendar collapse quite like it has around the world. What are your thoughts going forward? What is your plan for this year at the moment? We're definitely planning to go ahead if we possibly can. Obviously, Cows Week is fortunate in terms of timing this year. I have great sympathy for all the other regatta organisers around the UK, around the world, having to make early decisions. We're lucky that we're lucky in respect of the fact that we don't really need to make a decision until probably the end of June. So we're certainly going ahead. The regatta is still 4 months away. It seems hard to believe. I mean, I'm an optimist, so I'll say this, but it seems hard to believe the world will still be in the same place we are now in 4 months. With a bit of luck, things will be somewhat easier, and we will be able to have a great Cows Week. But the caveat to that is we don't know entirely what the situation will be. But as it is, we definitely plan to have a regatta in August, all being well.
I presume, actually, in many ways, because it's such an established, because of the nature of Cows Week, it's a very established event and it's based at the same place every time. You're not facing the same kind of problems as events like Sail GP or the America's Cup or some of these big Grand Prix events that have to build a lot of infrastructure. So you don't have to do that, I guess. No,
we could run the regatta in a slightly different feel and a slightly different way. We don't necessarily have to have beer tents. It's a town regatta. It always has been, it always will be a town regatta. It's one of the great attributes of Cows Week, that the town buys into the regatta, and it does make it a lot easier for us. Very difficult if you've got to, a la Wimbledon, put a big fence around everything and do TV and tickets. We could run the regatta as long as we've got cannons firing off the yacht squadron and wind and tide, and I guarantee you the wind and the tide will be there. As long as we've got that, we can have a regatta. And ultimately, it is a boat race. The socials are important, and there's every reason to believe that some socials could go ahead. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. It's way too far in advance. And if we can run normal Cows Week, we're ready to do it. We're working from home, and some of the staff have been furloughed, but the office is shut officially. But we're still keeping things moving in the background, and if we can run it, we will, and it is a little easier for us than for a lot of other people. And of course, the other thing is a lot of our competitors are within the Solent. If you're running a World Championship, I was supposed to be doing the Etchells Worlds in Perth in November. The issue for them is people are shipping boats literally halfway around the world. If we said to people, there's a boat race on Saturday and it's at the squadron off Cowes, a lot of people could get there from around the Solent or even from the West Country. And I think people would enjoy a boat race in August if we can possibly put it on.
Putting on the positive hat and assuming that it does all go ahead as planned, I know that you've been planning on some changes anyway to this year's Cows Week. What are the main things that will be different this year?
The very big one for us from a sailing perspective is the split of the cruiser divisions. So this year we've split them into performance cruisers and club cruisers. And I think the names are self-explanatory. But we think that'll deliver better racing for both groups of boats. And we're really excited about that.
There's some big changes with the starts, aren't there, as well?
It's clear that actually the squadron start line is where most sailors like to start if they possibly can. And we do have restrictions on it in terms of space, ferry access, whatever. But we would like to have more boats starting on the squadron if we possibly can. So the current plan is that we will do much more frequent starts, probably every 5 minutes, with some gaps. So maybe we'd do 4 starts at 5 minutes and then a 10-minute gap to let the ferry out and let the boats clear the start line. But the idea is to have starts every 5 minutes on the squadron, maybe 25, 28 a day, rather than what we do now, which is 15 to 18. But we think it would be good. We think the sailors would love it. It's so nice to come out of the Medina River. The start line is right there. You don't have to go too far. It is Cows Week. It should be in Cowes. So if we can pull that off, which is the current planning, then and all will be revealed in the sailing instructions in due course, that I think would be great.
Earlier this year we ran a feature about the London Dinghy Show. In it I spoke to Luke Patience, the Olympic 470 sailor, about some of the boats that had caught his eye. And among them was a Flying 15. Well, this next video is the story behind that boat.
The difficulty with the new jib is, because of its shorter foot, we want to sheet it further inboard, and unfortunately we can't build the boat any narrower, so we've had to sort of develop systems. The first time I ever sailed with the new jib, we tied a piece of string with a block on to the tow strap position to try and pull it further inboard. everybody's need for speed and has caused the boat to be fitted out so much better, with better gear, more easier to operate at all times. Whereas before, you tended to just, for example, your jib tracks, you had them on a plunger track, never move them unless it got really windy. Now you're playing them all the time upwind. Kickers, everybody wants to put more kicker on, everybody wants to put more rig tension on. Your rig tension is another classic example. You know, nobody ever touched the rig tension previously, and now you're playing it according to the wind strength. Chris's boat that we've got here, we're developing some what we call pods, which are just mouldings that are going to be bolted on the inside edge of the cockpit to allow the jib cars to come even more inboard.
It's probably fair to say that the fit out of this boat is driven by the new jib in many respects. Is that right?
Certainly, with Chris it is, yes. And I suppose we're using it as a bit of a guinea pig, because should it work, then the pod system will allow anybody to bolt these pods on and mount the tracks even further inboard, which I certainly think will be more efficient. Now, we're in a bit of a grey area because we haven't actually sailed the boat with them yet. But that's always been the aim, to get sheeting further inboard with more control. This will do that. It'll be much better, definitely. But we have to give it a go and see how it goes.
How's Chris been different to any of the other clients that you've worked for?
Well, Chris, I've known Chris for a long time, and he never has the same as anybody else. That's just the way he is. He loves all to have everything to hand and everything to work. Personally, I think sometimes you can go too far, because you end up spending your time fiddling around rather than just sailing the boat. But everyone to their own, and this is what he wants. I mean, there are certain things he wanted that we managed to persuade him not to have yet, shall we say, because it would just be, I think, too much. So he has climbed down a little bit on some of the things he wanted, but at the end of the day, it's his boat, and we're trying to accommodate him with what he wants.
First Flying 15s was wandering down to Royal Windermere Yacht Club and wanting to sail the largest fleet in the area, which happens to be Flying 15s. Was made most welcome, so ordered one, and that was it. And that was probably in about 1988, 89, somewhere around there. This one will be my 7th. I'd done the circuit and done a lot of racing and sailed it overseas and wanted to sail a different boat. So I then went into sailing. I had lasers and a variety of other boats at the same time, RS400s, and then went into bigger boats. So I went into 1720s, Beneteau 34.7, and a variety of other classes just to try them out, JAT and a variety of different boats. And also I had a yacht built as well, and then went off sailing. Spent most of my time for a couple of years sailing different locations in the world. So I didn't really then race for a period of time. But then got bored of that, and then decided that I'd like to get back into sailing again and racing. And I had a good friend called David, the editor, and we decided we'd sail together. So I'd crew for him for 18 months, trying to campaign for the Worlds in Ireland. We were fortunate enough to qualify for the team. I had a great time doing it. Absolutely love the Flying 15, and especially for sailing it on Windermere.
Yeah, you know what it's not scaring me at the moment, because it's just exactly what I've come from in my day one. Yeah, the same process. I mean, then you were shouting about that, weren't you? yeah. That got around your meeting well.
What's recently come to the fleet is the fact that the sheeting position of the jib is far more inboard. So people have been fitting barber rollers or little units onto the track that brings that position inboard, but you also need to be able to position it both in and outboard with a barbarola or other mechanisms. So what I've done is I've designed a pod that fits on the side of the tank, which enables you to, instead of barber holing the jib position inboard, you actually barber hole it outboard. Doing a variety of drawings and sketches of how I might use two tracks and control the right lines between the two tracks, and barbarola in or barbarola out, and how one track interacts with another one, and from there work then onto an actual pod design, looking at measuring boats and how that will work. So now that design effectively is being made into a plug. We're then making a epoxy version of it, and then when the epoxy version we're sure it works and it's fitted, then we'll make a carbon version which will then hopefully be ready for the show.
I mean, obviously the putting the plinth in, which I know you thought looks big, but actually I think it's proportioned in the boat. It's looking good. Now this is only a dummy one that we've had made out of the mould. The eventual boat will have a carbon fibre one, which will look quite tidy. So basically what we've done is we've fastened the inner track in right at the front of the to give you that extra further inboard sheeting position, led back to incorporating the cleat mount as well, rather than putting a separate mount on. And then we've put a second track further up. So at the moment most people barber haul it in. Well, we're actually barber hauling out. So what happens is, as the sheet, if you let the barber right off, then the sheet keeps on its inboard position. The barber then, you can pull it further outboard if the wind gets windier and you want to come outboard, or go on a fetch or a reach, two sail reach. You can then bring your sheeting position further outboard. So you've got all that position covered by the sake of two lines. The car control, which is going to be here, and the barber hauler, which controls the thwartsheets movement, and the track looks after the fore and aft movement. Now obviously it's a bit complicated, and this is just a bit of a mock-up. All these are just stuck on with double-sided tape because I've been playing around with the distances of the track and where we can mount all the cleats. We're here. We're still at it. The carbon pods will arrive on Wednesday. So once we get those on, well, we know where they're going to go, so that's not an issue. It's just getting everything else finished, but that's all right. The plan is to get the hull. We'll have the rest of the fittings on, and then the hull will get weighed on Monday night. Good. Yeah. And then Tuesday morning, first thing, we'll put the keel on, get it on the trailer, put the keel on, and then we can finish off around the hull keel joint.
It looks really, because I'm a fussy bugger as well, it's not only does it work practically and well, Phil's made sure of that, but I think it also looks good as well. It looks the part, and I think with those pods on it will make it a bit different and a bit unique, so looking forward to Thursday. If you don't have 7s and 3s in it, you might as well forget it. So every boat I've had, most of them have had the 3 and 7 in the sail number. So this one is 4073, therefore that will make it fast. We just have fun. The biggest thing achievement is to have fun, but there again, got in the water, and as you know, I am slightly aggressive. So I'm not quite sure where to pitch it, but it'd be good to qualify for the British team to go to the Flying 15 Worlds in Fremantle in Australia next year. That's a big target for this year, and it's just spend a lot of time on the water as much as we can, and as I say, have fun, enjoy it, and have a good time.
Still on 0, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's calibrated, and we're going to use that rope to weigh the boat. 122.2. 138 minus 122.2 equals 15.8. The boat, it needed 2 correctors, each weighing 7.9 kilos. So they've now been bolted into the console and marked. Each corrector has to be marked with its weight and the number of it and put onto the certificate. All the fittings are done. We've just been finishing off all the nice edges of the rope and things like that and giving it a clean. So now the plan's to get it outside and put the mast up and just set it up outside ready, so that when it gets to Alexander Palace it'll all be just a matter of putting it together.
So 23 hours ago the boat was finished, and here we are, arrived at Alexander Palace. We're just doing the final bits and pieces, putting it all together to make sure everything works, and it's looking good and looking forward to the show.
So once again, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the comments that have been flooding in after the first episode. We really do enjoy reading them, and we love hearing what you have to say. Keep them coming. In the meantime, keep well, stay in touch. See you next time.